to me, I didn't feel like I was reading a Brandon Sanderson book, even though I was listening to it and I was listening to him read it himself, which is quite
Yes.
funny. As an aside, I'm so glad he hires audiobook readers because he's a fantastic author.
He's not that
But
bad. He's not that bad. He's reading to an entire auditorium of like 3,000 people. And yes, he trips up, but he's not that bad.
so it's not the tripping up. Never mind. It's maybe I'm just spoiled to Michael Kramer and our others. And you're right. A live reading is very different than like recorded and
Right.
perfected. But
let me put it this way.
Like respectfully, in his voice, I don't think the books sound the same in his voice.
Let me put it this way. He does way better than he has any right to as an author. Like, authors are not known for their public speaking ability in general, like as a stereotype. So he does, I feel like he bats above average for a public speaking author. Welcome back to Following Note on Stormlight Podcast. This week is episode 293, and we are covering the early chapters, chapter 1 and chapter 2 of The Fires of December by Brandon Sanderson. This book is slated to come out, I believe, in December of this year. Paul, how are you?
Doing good. New Brandon book. I feel like we're a little behind the curve on this. This is what everyone was talking about after Dragonsteel. But here we are, catching up like we always do.
We're only 2 months behind the curve, as opposed to stereotypical on this podcast, which was like 10 years behind the curve. Elliot, how are you?
True. We're getting closer.
I'm doing great. Fires of December. I'm intrigued yet again by new Brandon. I feel like we've seen him try different things with the secret projects, and I'm very intrigued to see what new thing is Brandon going to try with Fires of December. So when you assigned us reading the early chapters of this, I got excited.
I feel like the new thing he's doing here is just like absolute tear-jerking tragedy, right? Like it starts pretty heavy.
I've actually got a couple theories about where I think he might be going with this, but I'm gonna save it till the end of the episode after we kind of talk through the things and ask the "all right, what are your predictions?" question.
Yeah, do we need to roll intro or something, or
no?
Can I start talking about the tragedies right away?
No. I do have a leading question before we actually talk about it. So let me lead with that. I want your very brief vibe check on the story. Are you excited about it? Is this not what you're most interested in a secret project? I want to get a feel for the room of how we felt after those 2 chapters. Paul, you can go first.
Okay. First chapter, crazy. The roller coaster twist at the end, wild. Because I think like I was really confused about where this was going. My 2-cent answer is my initial gut instinct was not as excited, not as like hooked or interested. However, the is obviously just depressing. But then it's like,
right.
And then she wakes up and starts all over. And so I'm like, okay, there's gonna be like you're set and you're supposed to feel that way. And then you're gonna see how she's gonna try and fix that. I'm guessing December is gonna try to fix all this. So obviously I'm gonna read it. Initial, I'm like, maybe it's hard coming off of Emberdark. It's not at that level for me of interest, but does seem like a very unique premise. So I am curious to see where it goes. I'm very swayable, but I'm leaning towards not as interested.
Our typical fence rider, as always, Paul.
Ooh,
Elliot,
okay.
Elliot, how'd you feel?
I'm not overly super excited about it, but I'm definitely intrigued. And Brandon has earned enough of my faith that I'll, like Paul said, definitely read it. I'll be very excited to see where he's going with it. That has the premise, completely hooked me from the beginning. I'll give it a chance. I definitely fell for the twist in that up until the second to last sentence of chapter 1, I was very bored. And then the twist hits and you go, "Oh, okay. I'm paying attention now."
I I have very mixed feelings. So from the end of chapter 2, I feel like it's kind of cool, but I feel like there's got to be a new problem presented, and the whole book can't be, oh, she's undoing all the wrongs that happened to her previously in life.
I
She's just like stepping in and fixing them all. Then it's like you kind of feels very telegraphed
Well,
or whatever, if that's the case.
she fixed all her problems in chapter 2, and now she's headed upriver. That's the hook. Is we've solved the village. Now we're going to go solve the plague, right?
Okay. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I'll just go ahead and throw it out here actually because it might actually set the scene for us. I wonder, or I have a theory or a guess or an idea or something. What if this is going to repeat multiple times throughout this book,
Mm.
and it's gonna unfold like unpeeling the layers of an onion. Of we get story version 1, and it's very simple. It's not a lot's happening. It's very sad. And then we get story version 2, where all the events of story version 1, she gets to like change them or do something different, but like the scope of it all is very different. And she sees what is happening at a larger scale. Why is the Demon Blood River drying up? Why is there a plague? Why does the trade suddenly stop coming in from the capital? And then maybe like she dies again and then starts over again and gets to see like a whole nother level of what's going on and what's driving events. And I don't know, maybe crazy, like do it a whole again. And like by the end of cycle 4, she's like ascending to a shard and things like that. What if we're gonna get like layers of this story?
I wouldn't instantly discount it, but that's not where I immediately went. I assumed this was a one-off event, and then she then has to go solve the mystery of why everybody on the planet died. And Elliot used the term bored at the end of the chapter 1. There's a lot of terms that I would use. That's not one of them. I was certainly not bored. I was depressed and sad and wanted to stop listening until the last sentence of the first chapter. But even after the first sentence of the last sentence of the first chapter, you're still like, oh man, that was really depressing. I don't think this is going to be a recurring death thing. I have plenty of theories which we can dive into more, but my leading one is she's a cognitive shadow and doesn't know it. That's why she can't get pregnant. And she can't die. That doesn't explain the time loop thing though. So I'm just assuming that she's a cognitive shadow from the start, and she doesn't understand that term and like wouldn't comprehend that. However, there has to be some magic system thing in place for Hoyd not to recognize her as such, because Hoyd shows up in the story and says she's of no consequence, moving on. And so I am very curious why that's the case.
Yeah. I want to talk about the setting that we're introduced to,
Okay.
because this felt very, very much not like Brandon to me. I will say, before I say this doesn't sound like Brandon Sanderson, Brandon does touch a lot on tough topics and tough struggles that people go through, and I think he does it in a very good way. He writes a lot of things into his stories: depression, anxiety, and a lot of other like things that people struggle with, and um, does it in a good way. But this felt different. You're introduced to a character who is like infertile and then has all these like terrible things happen to, and the way he like talked through it felt like kind of crazy to me. Like, I mean, it may have stuck out to me more because that's something that my wife and I have struggled with, and I know a lot of people in my circle struggle with, so it's like anyone reading who struggles with this, like it definitely sticks out like massively, like massive sore thumb, like right away. And so it's like it felt kind of crazy and quite jarring to me in that regard. And then, but not just that. That was just like the appetizer, that was like your first sentences, like the starting to get into this first chapter, and then it's like all this like crazy tragedy, and everyone is like dying and all this stuff, and so it felt very like dark and different to me, and kind of sending this very bleak message of like people who are very swept under the rug in society. And it was very like it didn't feel like to me, I didn't feel like I was reading a Brandon Sanderson book, even though I was listening to it and I was listening to him read it himself, which is quite
Yes.
funny. As an aside, I'm so glad he hires audiobook readers because he's a fantastic author.
He's not that
But
bad. He's not that bad. He's reading to an entire auditorium of like 3,000 people. And yes, he trips up, but he's not that bad.
so it's not the tripping up. Never mind. It's maybe I'm just spoiled to Michael Kramer and our others. And you're right. A live reading is very different than like recorded and
Right.
perfected. But I
Let
don't
me
know.
put it this way.
Like respectfully, in his voice, I don't think the books sound the same in
Sure.
his
Sure.
voice.
Let me put it this way. He does way better than he has any right to as an author. Like authors are not known for their public speaking ability in general, like as a stereotype. So he does, I feel like he bats above average for a public speaking author.
I think that's fair,
Totally.
except I don't know if I've ever listened to another author ever read like an excerpt of one of their books in my life.
Maybe you should.
So
You've
case
never
sample
listened to
of one.
Tolkien read The Ride of the Rohirrim?
Tolkien stuff is cool.
Oh, I gotta go look that up. I do. Ever since I heard Tolkien's voice from interviews, whenever I read the Tolkien books, I think through it in the way he talks. So I think it literally reads better whenever you think through it in the way he phrases and the way he talks. So yeah, I'd rather listen to Tolkien read his books than Brandon Sanderson read his.
Which that's fair.
Anyways, back to what I was saying. It was just way more bleak than I was expecting, especially coming from our author who like won't kill any characters, like type of situation. Stuff gets dark and bad, but like this was way more real world hurt than like fantasy war, fantasy like fight, war, courage, honor, death and glory, type of thing. So
I think I actually stumbled across maybe a little bit of context for that. Did the two of you guys just listen to the YouTube video?
Yes.
I did.
I listened to the YouTube video, but then after I pulled up the words of Brandon on the Coppermine where they have the transcript of it. And at the front of it, there's a bit of intro from him that's not in the YouTube video.
Okay.
Let me read this for you. It gives some interesting perspective on where this book might be coming from. Here's what Brandon apparently says. Where did this book come from? This book is one of those books that I was not planning to write. It is one of those books where I was working on the outlines. I actually wrote this end of last year, so working on the outlines for Ghost Bloods. I was getting primed for writing Ghost Bloods. I was finishing up some various things, and I wasn't planning to write this book, and then the book kind of came to me. And I don't like to speak mystically about books, but that's not how I am. But this is one of those ones where I'm like, I'm supposed to write this book. I need to write this book. I have to write this book. I'm going to ignore my family during the holidays and write this book. They're used to it. And it turned out very special, and I'm very excited to share it with you. I thought that was kind of intriguing.
Interesting. I'm going to have to mull over that.
Right? So now I would say I think I'm more excited to read the rest of this book after that than actually hearing the first two chapters.
Besides the obvious reference of Groundhog Day, where you die and relive a certain setting, what did you guys get from the setting? What type of feels did you get? Because I, about halfway through chapter 1, was like, oh, we're just living in Hyrule. This is the Legend of Zelda entry to the Cosmere. Did you guys feel the same? I felt
She's the
very
hero
heavy.
of time.
No. She's not the hero of time. There's a prophet who comes and banishes a demon or the demon guy, and the demon has clearly returned, and we're waiting for the prophet to come back. That entire little like monologue, whoever says that, I'm like, oh, this is just the Legend of Zelda, and Ganon's back.
Oh, so she's Zelda and she has to go awaken Link to go re-kill the demon
Yeah,
that woke
sure.
up. It ruined the world. Got it.
I didn't. No, this is. I recognize this is one of my bigger flaws with picking up new fantasy books. I'm not the best at painting a mental picture of the setting. In my head, all these people were like just in a room the entire time, like just like insert generic room here that's like could pass as like colonial era, could pass as medieval era. I don't know where we are, So I did not think of anything that clever. Obviously, I thought of Groundhog Day. I was like, so are we gonna? That's what I'm left thinking. Are we gonna have the multiple deaths like over and over, or are we going to have like second chance at life type of thing? Um, but yeah, there's the old adage: can you judge a book by its? You can't judge a book by its cover, right? Can we judge a book by its first two chapters? I feel like I can't. Can't like fully, obviously. Um, but I've been confused by this one. It's felt very different. It makes sense with what Elliot you shared about what Brandon was saying about it. He feels more compelled to write this, I believe, from a more I don't know if it's like a more just a more emotional viewpoint and things on people in life.
I am very curious why he wrote this book, and after what he just said, because he has two rules of the Cosmere. Rule number 1 is we don't do multiverses, and rule number 2 is we don't travel back in time.
Yeah.
I feel like by the end of chapter 2, we could have broken both of those. I was very tripped up by our two staples of the Cosmere that he came up with like 5 years ago of like, I will never time travel to the past and I will never do multiverses. I felt like this one did both in 2 chapters.
Do you think that there's going to be Do you think there's going to be a very genuine reason why this is the case, or do you think it's going to be a little heartbreaking for you? Because I know Trevor, you're like extremely proud of those rules that he
Oh yeah.
has. You're like, I super
And
don't want time travel. I super don't want multiverse,
yes.
essentially. But what if we get somewhere where it's like, no, this isn't time travel, but like through some invested force, she got to relive or was granted some gift, like what is your tolerance level to it, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask.
My
If
tolerance is 0 and I'm still convinced neither of those is happening.
Okay, I
That's where I'm
also
at.
I think that there's obviously something else going on here, because I'm also pretty strong on those rules, and I don't think he would write this and just be like, no, those are old rules, like I'm gonna put
What
an element of time jumping in the Cosmere.
what I would be sad to hear, and maybe he does this well or something, but I will say this. I would be very sad to hear that this entire thing is happening in the spiritual realm, so none of it's actually real. That'd be very disappointing to me.
That was going to be my guess, because of course I'm looking at this thinking through what we currently understand,
Right.
and with what I currently understand from this from the start of chapter 2, it's either she has gone back in time, or Brandon's also said he's not ever touching like the afterlife or anything, right? But I'm like, hypothetically, could you
Well,
say that going into the beyond, you relive your life or something like that? Like that's uncharted territory
yeah.
and
I
really
guess that
far
is rule number
fetched.
3 is he said he will never touch the beyond,
Yeah,
whatever that is.
yeah. So I feel like each theory right now would be
Breaking one or
breaking
all of
one of
them.
the rules. Yeah,
Yes.
one rule. Yeah.
I can think of at least one scenario that would explain what could be going on here because we've seen a similar version of it in Yumi. Big, massive spoilers for Yumi. If you haven't read that book, skip ahead for sure here. Isn't that kind of, well, it, the world around her may not be what she thinks it is.
Right.
We
Which is
saw Yumi living out a life over and over, and it was a world she thought made sense. And then we learned later, oh, it's all just fabricated.
yeah.
We could be getting another version of that.
Which is why I immediately jumped to the spiritual realm, because I assumed that those rules are still in place and she's just trapped in the spiritual realm somehow, living out her life over and over or something to that effect.
Do you want to know something that this is not like an important part of the story that we've read in these two chapters, but there was one part at the start of chapter 2 that really stood out to me and in a very weird way resonated with me. He Brandon talks about how once December is like back and figuring out what the heck is happening, I just died, but I just woke up and I'm like a 21 again. And says that she like looks in the mirror, right, and has that like disconnect between how she knows herself to look and how she's seeing herself. And
Yeah.
like he goes on to explain a bit of that. It's like one of those kind of random phenomena things that like you don't really think about, but like every now and then you like see yourself in like a picture or in the mirror or something, and you're like, "Is that how I look?" You know, like there's like kind of that moment that
Yeah.
I think everyone has probably had at some point. And I don't know why, but that just really like stuck out to me. I think it just like I can picture that feeling. Definitely not to the degree that December experiences there, right? Of jumping like decades. But I feel like I had one of those moments recently. I don't know. It's just one of those things I like looked in the mirror and I'm like, who is this? Like I feel like I just like aged a bunch or something. Like and so yeah, like oddly the way he wrote that sequence and that like feeling and that moment felt kind of surreal and like stood out to me. It's totally
I
not like relevant plot point, but it like really stood out to me as kind of like I feel like he nailed the description of that, whatever that you would call that.
I can tie it directly into the plot. You ready?
Hmm.
As you were talking about that, does that disprove that she's a cognitive shadow because she doesn't look like how she perceives herself?
I think
She
I would say so because every other cognitive shadow is like how they were when they passed,
Right,
like
and you
when they
perceive
died.
yourself a certain way, therefore you portray that as yourself in the cognitive realm.
Hmm.
So does her being as her 21-year-old self and going through the detail of having that mental disconnect of that's not me, does that disprove that she's a cognitive shadow?
Couldn't couldn't someone else's perception be stronger than her
Ooh,
own?
okay.
Because we know that, yeah, investiture, cognitive shadows react to how they're perceived to be, but it seems to me like it could be coming from someone else, maybe.
Minor dusk spoilers. She's just an entity and somebody else around her is
Sure.
perceiving her as 21.
Or like doesn't Syl change a bit when Kaladin perceives her in different ways? Like a lot of
Yes.
Syl's perception changes Syl's thing, but maybe there's more than just December going on here.
Yeah, interesting. Hmm. What do you guys think classifies as a demon in the Cosmere? We got the the lore drop that there's a demon upstream who is banished, and that feeds the river, right? And now that he's back, the river dries up, or something like that. What
I feel like,
what do you guys think qualifies as a demon?
it's. I have no idea where this is in the Cosmere time frame here, but I feel like it's got to be just one of our generally creepy Cosmere beings, like a shade, a Khandra, maybe
A
a
fused.
sleepless, maybe
A fused could
Fused-
totally be a demon.
a fused would be crazy. If a fused is here, that'd be wild. Yeah, that absolutely could qualify.
I was thinking
I
something
think so.
like more simple. Like, what if it's just like a fallen Elantrian? You know, like don't they have a special term for those like zombie Elantrian guys that walk around Elantris? I don't remember the term for that.
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm trying to qualify in my head what is like a cursed being or an otherworldly demon according to this culture. What would that be?
I thought about that situation in a slightly different way because we're told, I think I'm remembering this, that the river of demon blood that goes by their town, there's a kind of cool description of her going out and like sticking her hand in the purple goop and it like doesn't stick to her hand. Weird, whatever.
Yeah.
But we're told, help me remember this. The demon has been like stabbed and it's
Yes.
just
The
bleeding
sword.
forever.
The sword is still in the Legend of Zelda. The sword is still in the demon, and presumably the sword has been removed, and the demon wakes back up.
and the bleeding stops and the river dries up.
Yes.
I actually went a rather bizarre direction with that of what if this creature is a walking perpendicularity and when the sword or whatever it is like stabs into it,
Oh,
it's like a never-ending leakage of investiture flowing out from like the spiritual realm.
because that's exactly
until-
how Dusk describes the perpendicularity, isn't it? It's like that metallic, like paint that doesn't actually stick to your hand when you
maybe
go in the pool, or Vati describes it that way, maybe.
maybe yeah.
But you might be onto something with a leaking perpendicularity.
Yeah, that was kind of where I went to it. Of like they think they slayed a demon when actually they just poked a hole in a perpendicularity, and it's like oozing out until somebody stops it.
And maybe they restart the perpendicularity, so the river dries up. Because if you dam up your perpendicularity again, then it'll create a pool.
Right.
And then
Yep.
if you start using the perpendicularity, then a plague is going to kill you all because you're having
Oh,
epidemics
maybe.
from foreign planets.
Ooh, the Iriali show up because they travel everywhere, but they accidentally bring a plague with them.
Ooh, yeah, ouch. I
I
don't dislike the theory. I terrible circumstances, but I don't dislike the theory.
actually think the plague might somehow tie into our magic system. I have no clue how, but I was very much on the lookout for, okay, what's the clever magic system that we're going to see? I didn't see anything, but it was very specifically described as an arcane plague.
Yeah.
So I'm now guessing somehow the plague is related to the magic.
That was also another point in the favor of she's a cognitive shadow, is because she doesn't get the plague. What if she's just
Right.
not real in the first place, right? Like that was the easiest explanation to me. Any shards in the system?
I feel like we have not nearly enough evidence to really theorize about this, but this was another thing I was kind of on the lookout for, not expecting to get evidence at all. But just after that rather sad first chapter story we got and her chance to maybe like live life again a little bit, my thoughts were kind of drawn towards the idea of mercy.
Okay.
You follow?
Absolutely.
Probably not as well as Paul does, but yes.
I think that's a really cool premise I did not think of. I'm sitting here thinking of like, how is invention going to be involved in this, or something stupid like that. I think your thoughts are way more feasible here. I think that's interesting. I mean, if there's an individual that Mercy may be attracted to, I feel like it would be someone along the lines of what we're introduced to with December. Because December we're introduced to, and we're obviously meant to feel terrible for her, like just like mournfully bad for her in her life. And so, I think there's absolutely a thing, kind of in the way, almost. I could see it very much being akin to the way that like um what is it like Dusk is kind of connected with Patchy. Like there could definitely be some kind of connection there that could. I don't know how the rules would work, but we've never really met Mercy, so um could the jury is still out. It could really be anything, so why not this?
I don't. I don't have a better option to offer besides Mercy, except for maybe like a combo, like a new Wind and Truth spoilers, like a new vessel or a new shard or whatever you want to call that. So like, it's something like super depressing. What if you combined like ruin and autonomy or something? Like what would that, like, just despair? What would make like Apocalypse as a shard? You know,
What do you guys think Hoyd's travail is going to be? Brandon has pitched this book as he's turning it into a series of stories that aren't about Hoyd, but they're told by Hoyd, and also Hoyd gets into random tough predicaments like becoming a coat rack. What is his travail going to be? He's in the scene briefly,
yes,
but he didn't seem to be under any travail.
not yet anyway. I assume he like goes off to the capital and gets his travail there. I don't know. This is impossible to predict because
It's
Travail 1 was he was a stupid cabin boy who I don't remember,
Cursed,
like
yes.
had to curse you out or something when you talk to him or something like that. And then his second one was he was a coat rack. So how to predict Brandon's brain on this one? I have absolutely no clue.
the thing is, my guesses are on opposite ends because on one hand, I feel like Hoyt has become more and more sincere throughout the more recent Cosmere books.
True, yeah.
And on the other hand, if we are coupling together these three books, where one of which, yeah, he's a cabin boy, one of which he's a coat rack, I don't want to say, yeah, he's going to be just like a sincere good guy who's going to help out our protagonist, like that doesn't fit into that at all. So,
Doesn't he say, what's the wording? I need to go look at it. Doesn't he say that this was the one and only time I spoke to her as she passes him in the tavern or something like that? I'm assuming that he's not going to be, I mean, I think we will see him later, but I don't think he's actually going to be super involved in December in this book. Let me go check. I want to get the wording on this.
While you're looking that up, I have a nice big unless to throw at you. You even have this in the outline. Are her parents going to be relevant?
Yeah.
And I have exactly one word to go off of with a little mini theory here. December is described as having angular features. There's another character in the Cosmere who is frequently described as having angular features. It's
Just
Hoyd.
mhm.
Doesn't he say like, and her father was like a nitwit or something like that?
Yeah, no. So here's what they say. Oh shoot, I don't know if I can find this. This actually maybe is
got
the
it.
second point here. Oh, go ahead.
I've got it if you want me to read it. The father had been a passing sailor with the charm of a sonnet, but the moral character of a limerick. As the mother was not native, no next of kin were available to take the child.
And isn't that just something that Hoyd would kind of deprecating humor say about himself?
It's possible.
Absolutely. Whenever it talked about like a birth or something, I totally thought we were going to see twins and these were going to be our introduction to the twins. But it didn't happen here. So,
I am still stuck on that too. That's a theory I'm carrying out of Isles of the Emberdark, and I'm going to hold on to for a while. Is Hoyd makes a very obscure reference to wife and twins, not in the same sentence, so they could be different. But I jumped to, ooh, does Hoyd have twins? So now I think my brain is stuck on, ooh, who are Hoyd's? Does Hoyd have kids? So maybe I was predisposed to find this theory in here.
What was I originally looking up? I don't even remember.
His description of like has only spoken to her once.
Oh yeah. Somebody talk about something. I'll get it eventually.
um, I had a thought. I had no idea, but you're talking about it's probably going to be important who her parents are. They talks at the end about how she's going to go see the king, right? And I was really trying to listen for, okay, what's the king's name? Like, what's the king's name? Is this going to be somebody we know or somebody important?
King
You-
Lopin.
Yeah, it was not named yet, right? I felt like that was
I don't think
intentional,
so.
and I'm absolutely like, we're gonna know this king. Yeah, King Lopin. Yeah, something ridiculous. Like,
I've
I don't know who Spook or somebody's gonna be here. I don't know.
Spook. I'd be down for Spook.
That'd be cool. I would also
I
be
have
down
the
for that.
quote. You guys ready? The stranger, which is Hoyd, had refused everything evening stew for the meat it contained and sat idly humming to himself and writing with a quill in a small book. He was quite handsome and with a quite prominent nose, which I would prefer to describe as incredible. Sir, December asked, would you like something to drink? No, thank you, I replied. And that was it. She withdrew, and we did not speak again during her lifetime. You might have been expecting more from me, a tale, some advice, at the very least, a joke. Very interesting term they're using.
Yeah.
During her lifetime.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that, but chapter 2 could certainly be after her lifetime. So maybe he will be involved.
And I guess for what it's worth, if this is Hoyd's kid, the fact that he leaves her abandoned for a rather rough life until she's reborn is kind of not cool. So
Yes.
maybe I'm
I
hoping
would,
this isn't Hoyd's kid.
if that is, yes, if Hoyd does turn out to be a absolutely terrible scumbag of a father, that it would be rather disappointing to find out.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that shifts that into unlikely.
I'm trying to think of anybody else. What she's described as pale skin, dark hair, angular features. Is there any other candidates for this for her parents besides Hoyd?
With the dark hair and pale skin and features and stuff, is that not akin to how Yasna is described? So I
Uh,
also thought Hoyd because I thought, is this going to be Hoyd and Yasna? But I'm like, that doesn't happen, right?
no,
So
the Alethi are darker skin. The Alethi are
okay,
more
that's right.
tan,
That's
dark
right.
tan. The only other character I can think of is Vin or like a central Scadrian.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, we've got our Warbreaker characters that can like change their hair color on whim.
Yes.
that's true.
Didn't it say her mother was not a local? Didn't I just read that?
I think
The
he
whole
did.
thing is that she's like a foreigner, right? That's like the
Yeah.
whole point that he makes throughout all the rest of the tragic things. Is nobody trusts her because she's not from here.
Yeah. The
So
mother was not native, not no next of kin. Yeah. So father is a passing sailor, whether that means local or not is not said. Mother is not a native. So mother presumably a world hopper? I wonder if she's like super invested and there's no investiture on the planet. And that like really messes with things, you know?
yeah,
I I had just like one other thought I wanted to share, I think. And it's kind of random, but I thought it was a bit of an encouraging note out of a somewhat depressing first chapter that we've talked about. I I got a little ray of hope during the second chapter when she lives this life all the way through, pretty rough life. Everyone around her dies. Even when she finally has like a stroke of good luck or good fortune, it turns back around to bad. And you get to the end of the chapter and she dies, and you're just kind of left with like, oh man, what a downer. And then in the second chapter, it even kind of starts off a little bit on a downer because the very first thing she does is she goes and she saves the life of the wife of the dude that she ended up marrying the first time and ended up having a fairly happy life with.
Yes.
Remember all that? And
Yep.
so even that like starts her off on a downer on round two because it's like, oh, I just saved her. So now I can't marry that guy because now his wife is still around for his kids. Bummer. And then there's like a moment where she's talking to that guy, the Reeve. Is that his name? He's like the judge. I think it's like a title. Reeve.
Yeah. He's like the sheriff from the Capitol.
Right. And there's like a moment where she's talking with him at one point and she's like looking at his desk and fondly remembering like reordering his desk and helping keep him organized. And that little hit of nostalgia for her, I actually found really a hopeful moment because it kind of lit up for me. Man, she had a rough life, but yet throughout that whole rough life, there are actually small happy moments that she misses and that she wishes she could relive again. And you kind of came out of chapter 1 of, man, that sucked. But then there's that little reminder of like, you know what? Even in the midst of all that, there were still happy moments that she had, and there were still elements of that that were really beautiful for her. That relationship she had with those kids, and slowly growing over time to love that sheriff dude. I actually found that surprisingly positive.
Yeah. Now that you pointed out, I do like that she still found herself missing her old life, even though her old life, by all accounts, was absolutely terrible.
Right. And it still kind of ends on a little bit of a downer because at the end of it all, she like leaves the whole town. And she's like, well, there's no life for me here now. She gets to stick it to the jerk dude who abused her. And then but then she just kind of has to leave and she's off on this new adventure, but at the same time leaving behind everything she knew or any of this nostalgia or happy moments she had. So you're still left on kind of a, oh man, bummer. But there's still rays of hope. There's still rays of hope kind of peeking through the cloud.
Yeah. First, man, Elliot, I'm proud of you. Like that was so cool actually. Like I did not think through any of that, but I think what you said there of like even a sad life has happy moments is pretty surreal. It's like in no way are we like saying like, wow, she had it good. Like obviously she had terrible situation, and I don't know that I share the feelings of like, oh, it's kind of sad she's leaving the life she knew behind. I'm like, that's what we want. We want her to go like start this new better life and reset like kind of her trajectory, kind of get a second shot to make things better for herself. But it is like anytime you're leaving what you know, that's hard. Even if what you know is not good, you know, like leaving that is hard. And like for the unknown, if you will, like beyond, like that's kind of scary, especially as someone who like December kind of has this like outsider status. I'm like that is really challenging, but yeah, that's an interesting way to think through this. That is really hopeful. Um and that kind of like comes back to there's so much you can look at in life of like even though life at times and for many people is bad, like not good at moments in life are really hard, we're still glad to have life, as a baseline their life is still like worth living and really good, and there are still like good things, right? And so yeah, I feel like there's kind of a message hidden underneath what's happening here, not to give up, and that there are still good moments even within like hard times and hard places. So yeah, there's definitely some beauty in that. You definitely have to dig for that though. That's why I'm proud of you, because
Yes.
I'm like, that did not come to me, but you wrote that, and that is really insightful and really helpful, because that was not spelled out. I don't know if that's something that Brandon meant to convey, but that's just kind of one of those like truths, underlying truths in life, So yeah,
Well, I think it's
really
something
cool.
we can watch for as we like finally get this story. Is that going to be a theme that's worked into the story more, or is it just maybe a brief little moment in the beginning of the story? And we're going to go on to other things, but I think I'm going to be on the lookout a little bit for is that a recurring thing that December is going to experience?
I just had a thought while you were talking there, Paul. Over the course of the Cosmere of the last like 15 years, we've had brief mentions of a magic mechanic called fortune.
Oh,
What if we're going to explore that as a scale? What if like misfortune is part of the Cosmere magic mechanic?
Like your fortune is so like there's probably like a threshold of like the average person has this much fortune, but
Yeah.
it's what if you were so misfortunate that instead, like let's say the base is like 20, and someone with super high fortune has like 100, but like someone with low fortune has like 1, and yeah, that'd be crazy.
What
That'd be an interesting thing.
I don't have anything else to hypothesize there besides what if we're going to be exploring fortune more as a magic system through somebody who doesn't have any.
I can add just one small thought to that to maybe support you. You might be onto something. Fortune is kind of hinted at or tied to time a little bit. Usually in the future. It's like, oh,
Oh,
you have fortune, and so you can know the future,
yeah, okay.
right?
Like with Renarin,
So
right? Like Renarin and the
yes.
diagram and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Fortune comes up there of, oh, you have knowledge of the future because of the fortune that you have. What if somehow that's about all I have for that half-baked thought. But what if like
Yeah.
time and fortune are linked?
And if you're like have a bunch of misfortune, then you are manipulating time somehow. I don't.
Or
Interesting.
yeah, I don't know. There's more to this. We have to flesh this out. But like, what if December lives her life with so little fortune, misfortune, like you're talking about, but then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like right before she dies, she gets like this big dump of fortune. Someone like bestows a bunch of fortune on her, and then
Uh-huh.
that fortune is like what kind of flips time around a little bit on her, and she finds herself kind of going back through it this time with more fortune.
Huh.
Again, half-baked ideas here, but you might be onto something.
That's all I have. Anyone else have anything?
That's all I got. I'm optimistically intrigued by this book. I think that's how I describe my state right now after having talked about it with you guys.
Isn't there an elementic metal that improves your fortune? December needs some of that.
I think so. I think it's one of those random ones.
Yeah. Go.
But
get my
it talks
Arcana
about it in like
Unbounded.
the end of like the
Bands of
sort like
Mourning or
the end
something.
of, yeah, exactly, one of those, and you like you hear them and you're like, hold on, wait, you can like manipulate that, like
Right.
basically all these like crazy things we
Like
think you can't
storing
really
identity
touch.
and storing
Yeah,
fortune. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. You're probably right.
December needs some of that. Anything else, gentlemen?
That's it for me.
I don't think so. We'll see how the book goes when it comes out.
All right. We will be reconvening next week. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Elliot.
Toodles.
Bye. Bye now.